Welcome to Your World, a program about whatever is international at Central. I'm your host, Steve Horowitz. And today we're going to take a journey to Africa and hear about a 6-week experience in the country of Uganda. And my guest today to talk about that experience is Glenna Bain, longtime resident of Ellensburg. So welcome, Glenna.
Thank you very much.
So how did this whole trip come about? How did you find yourself going to Uganda?
Well, you know, my daughter, Hannah, who unfortunately couldn't be here today for the interview because she had to work, but she was actually looking at some pictures on Facebook of a friend of mine, Chris Weigers, who was over there teaching music in an orphanage in Uganda. And she looked at the slides and she just went, "Oh, Mom, I've got to go there." And I could hear by the conviction in her voice, it was like, oh, she's going to go. She's that kind of girl.
So this person that you knew who has been in Uganda for some time,
yes,
what has he been doing there?
Well, he's a professional musician originally from New York, and he just had a big time in his life where it was a big change, and he decided to go volunteer over there and teach music. And so when he went, he just completely, really fell in love with the program, and he's actually living there in Uganda now. He has a Ugandan partner and is living there. So he was our contact person. We didn't go with a group.
So did he suggest that to you or try to get you interested in going?
Not really. It was mostly Hannah, the motivation of her, because I just didn't want her to go alone to Africa. And I also had a real interest in, I had seen Chris's pictures, and I was really interested in seeing, what it would really be like. But I never dreamed in a million years I'd get to go to Uganda. That was the farthest thing from, anything that I'd ever planned to do, but it just seemed to be.
So was there a stated purpose, a program that you were going to work on, a goal?
Yeah, basically the idea was, to be there to be sure my daughter survived. I wasn't really necessarily in my own motivation, knowing what I was going to do, other than just be sure that she was safe. And
what was Hannah's plan?
And actually, Hannah was going to go teach clarinet there. It was what she really wanted to do. She saw that they had a brass band program in this orphanage, and that's how they make their money, actually. They go out and do different functions, they call them. And so they go out and do these functions and come back, and, that's how they eat. That's how they...
So Hannah is a student at CW. Is she a music major?
She's not, actually. And when she went to Africa, she thought she's probably going to major in dietetics. But as she started talking to the people about dietetics, and they're like, well, what is that? They don't really, that wasn't a real easy thing to understand for them. So it's kind of made her rethink, wondering what she's going to major in now. Something probably more along the lines of international, something that she could do where she can travel and perhaps make a difference, in the world. It really made an impression on her.
So her motivation was to go over and continue the work that this man, Chris, was doing or contributing to it, by teaching the kids how to play clarinet.
Exactly.
And you were going to just see what
I was going to make
happens.
sure she did.
So how did her experience of teaching music and your experience of being there with her, how did that unfold?
Well, that's a great question. Basically, as she started teaching clarinet, and it was interesting because they basically have instruments that date back to probably World War I or something that have been donated. So as she was teaching them clarinet and realizing that they were picking it up so fast, and as she's teaching, then I play piano and guitar, so I'm teaching music as well, but also just kind of enjoying the kids. There was a lot of time to just kind of tune into the kids and get to know them, etc. But anyway, Hannah began to realize that she's just almost reached the limit of her ability to teach, because they were picking it up so quickly. They're so eager and so hungry for, the teaching, and they're very quick studies. So Hannah ended up actually working with the girls. They formed an amazing girls club. And she ended up really teaching them a lot about reproductive rights and those kind of things. In the schools, they're teaching about abstinence, but they don't teach a lot about, all the other angles and that kind of thing. So she was doing a lot of actual just sex education with them. I imagine
AIDS is a problem in Uganda as well as in a lot of other places in Africa.
Right, which is one of the reasons there's so many orphans. Right.
So tell me a little bit about the kids that were there. Everyone spoke English? Well
Right.
enough to communicate
Yeah,
with
they
you?
educate, in the schools, they teach, and they teach in English. But, the thing about the kids that I think is most important is to go back to the director, Bosco, who started the orphanage. And he himself was orphaned at age 13. And he had 3 younger sisters. So he needed a place for them to go, where they could basically somewhat thrive. And that's how the orphanage was born. The other thing that went into that was Bosco said, it would be great to have an orphanage with the theme of music to the rescue, because he sees music as what saved his life, basically. He tells the story of, going and asking people, could you teach me to play music? He plays the trumpet now really well, but he tells the story of just how everyone said, no, go away, and that kind of thing. And so his dream was to be able to have kids like him be able to learn music. And that's what he founded the orphanage on. It's music to the rescue,
And about how many kids live in the orphanage?
There's 80 kids that live there, and there's 150 kids that depend on the services every day. A lot of street kids that come in and take music lessons and, are fed and everything. I think it's amazing that they can feed 150 kids for basically $25 a day.
So is all the money generated by the performances, or they also get donations? Or?
They're really working on, becoming sustainable with this the brass band and the different things they do. But they also definitely get donations. They've had a lot of people. What they do is they have people who come to Africa and they see the orphanage. They do, they show their program and everything, and then people just get very captivated by what they're doing there. It's a bright spot in the middle of a really desperate city. It's the city of Kampala, and there's over 1 million people there, and there's a huge amount of destitution. Many orphans that are just living on the streets. So.
Or would you say that a lot of the orphans came there because their parents died of AIDS or war, or did you get a sense of what caused them to be orphans?
Yeah, a lot of different reasons. Some of their parents dying of AIDS and the wars, the genocide, that type of thing. The other thing is that some of them actually do have parents, but they just can't afford to support them. So they're orphans in that sense. Mom might be around the corner, but just can't afford to support the child. And they say, well, they chased me away. And what they mean by that is, you have to go find your own way. We can't feed you. A lot of the people are just really desperate.
And so how did you find living in Uganda, living you lived in Kampala?
Yes, we lived down the road from the orphanage.
What was the security situation like?
I felt, at first, the first night I remember laying there in bed and hearing drums and thinking, just back to my days of, elementary school, where you see the people dancing around the fire, because we got in there in the middle of the night. So I couldn't really see where we were. And it was like, oh, I don't know how secure I feel. Why did I bring my daughter here? This kind of thing. But by the time we left 6 weeks later, I was really sad to leave. It felt like home. The way the people live is really simple. They're a lot less weighed down with their stuff, because things are pretty simple. It is more desperate than we have here, certainly. But the level of security that I felt exponentially arose as I began to feel more comfortable just with the loving natures of the people, and just feeling more secure with.
It sounds like that
being there.
Didn't take very long for you and Hannah to bond with the children.
Oh my gosh, we totally fell in love with the children. Yeah, it was extremely difficult to say goodbye to them. But yeah, the times we had with them were just really amazing. And,
are you in touch with them now? I mean, is it by letter, or someone has email access?
By Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah, it was a barrage of Facebook friending, when we got back, and it's just kind of amazing how you can keep in touch with people, and yeah, we keep in great touch through that. Yeah.
And in addition to spending most of your time in the orphanage, did you have a chance to venture out and see any other parts of Kampala or Uganda?
Yes, the 2 adventures we did. One was to Murchison Falls, which is the headwaters of the Nile. And so we took a trip actually down the river to the headwaters of the Nile. And all along the way, you look to your left and there's an elephant, alligators in the water, hippos, and it was just stunning to see these animals in their natural habitat. Plus, we were with 2 native Ugandans because my friend Chris was with us and his partner and her sister. So it was a really secure feeling, to be there with them. And then we hiked up to the top of the headwaters of the Nile and this beautiful waterfall, and that was just glorious. And then the other trip was to Jinja, and that was a whitewater rafting trip on a level 5 rapids, which was, it was wild.
So you brought along a short video of the orphanage and of the children. And tell me a little bit about who made this video.
Yeah, this is a mini documentary, and it was made by an East African filmmaker. His name is Emmanuel Munishi. He's from Tanzania. And long story short, basically he wrote a screenplay and submitted it to a foundation who funded him to be able to make this documentary of the orphanage. And this is all funded by a woman named Mira Nair, who's
a famous director.
Famous director for Monsoon Wedding and other documentaries and her dream about how to create peace in the world is through art and cultural exposure of, cultures that are unfamiliar to the majority of people. She's funded this, basically it's called the Maisha Foundation, and she brings these young East African screenwriters in, and they pick 4 of their screenplays to produce.
These invisible souls survive as best they can, scratching out an existence in the slums of the city. For some, it is robbery and stealing food. Others prefer to scavenge like marabou storks. Emily Sada's Children's Home, a refuge for boys and girls. A home for those who have no home, and a place where they can find the compassion and love they have been denied on the streets of Kampala. Unsupported by any formal sector, the young Ugandans at Emily Sada, some of whom are homeless themselves, now see the need to provide other street children with opportunities to learn craft skills, music, and basic education. This is Lawrence Kayondo, who has lived in the streets for many years. He comes to Emily Sada with his 2 young brothers and friends to learn music and receive a daily meal. Another is 9-year-old Herbert, who, for the theft of a single chapati, suffered justice of the streets, far away from the smart, uniformed police of Kampala. but now he's safe at Mlisada.
So when was the first time you got to see this?
I was lucky enough, Emmanuel sent me the documentary because they ended up using a song that I had written and taught to the students, or the orphans in Mlisada. And so that was a real thrill for me that that had been used in the documentary. And the song is We Are One, and it's just, it has the message of we are not the same, but we are one. And it was that was really touching for me when I was there in Africa, because one of the things that they're so refreshingly great at is, they see a white person and they say, Mzungu, Mzungu, and they go up and they're like, look, we're different. I'm really dark and you're really light. And it's just kind of out in the open, and they're delighted that we're different.
Are white people really rare, you think?
There's not that many white people there. It's pretty rare. So you draw a lot of attention when you're walking around. And so anyway, when this song was in the video, it really brought a lot of great memories back about, we are not the same, but we are one. And the feeling that I loved so much when we were there is that they made that so clear. It's like, I know we don't look alike, but we really are still the same. We're still humans together. And so it was
obviously your feelings are very strong for the
Absolutely.
For the children, for the orphanage, and for the experience that you had there. What would you like to do while you're here? I'm sure there are some thoughts you have about helping the orphanage.
Yeah,
what plans?
One of the things that I've thought about is I know that, there's probably a lot of people that have dusty musical instruments just sitting around in the back of their closet. And I don't know about you, but I remember when I was little, if I left food on my plate, my mom would say, think of the starving children in Africa and, eat that or whatever. And I thought, if we could box this up, that would be better, because I really don't want to eat it. I don't know how it's going to help them or that whole thing. So, but I was thinking about how they make their living from music. Mm-hmm. And we have excess in our culture, right? That things that are sitting around that probably we'd be happier if we could pass on to a good use. Mm-hmm. So people that have, like I figured out after we got back from Africa, I have this flute, that's collecting dust in the back of my closet. And I'd like to go back and actually deliver these instruments that people want to donate, and then also make the connections with the people. So you've got your trumpet gathering dust. You write a note and you say, here's what I did with it.
Are you looking for any kind of instruments?
Yeah, pretty much
not necessarily
any kind.
Brass.
Brass band is especially great because that's how they earn their money, with the brass instruments. But any kind of instruments, I guess, not a piano. I couldn't carry that back to Africa, but just. So
you're hoping to take whatever number.
I would love to collect.
What if it is really large?
It'd be great, and then the airlines can donate the space, because wouldn't that help them feel like they were doing something? And and actually, if there was ever a problem of having too many, there are other orphanages now in Uganda that are taking up this idea and, doing brass bands and supporting themselves that way too. So it's really a grassroots effort that is, doesn't hurt anybody. It's easy and something that will sustain itself.
So if people watch this show and have instruments that they would like to donate, what would be the best way to get them to you? They could contact me, they could contact you? Yeah,
either way, they could contact me at my email address, glennabain@gmail.com. Or I love the idea of if someone's going and this is going to go there. And the other thing is to be able to make the connections on Facebook or by email or that kind of thing with the people that donate the instrument, with the child that gets it and what they're doing.
That
and
would
just,
be a great connection.
yeah, the ongoing.
And I assume that the orphanage also could use donations of money, funding,
Yes.
besides instruments
Absolutely.
for the kids to play.
Absolutely.
So how would they go about doing that?
Well, that's another thing I can share with you, the email address of actually the website of the place where you can donate to this particular orphanage. And the money goes through a woman in New York who monitors to be sure that it's going, you know, that's always my concern is, am I going to give money and it's going to get skimmed off? But with Mlasada, it's the woman in New York monitors to see that it goes exactly where it's supposed to go. So it goes through her website, the donations through PayPal. That's the other thing. Sponsoring a child for their education, paying their school fees is another great way to support these kids at the orphanage.
Is there actually a program set up to do that, or just you're feeling that this would be a...
It would be you'd stipulate that as you're giving the money, that I want this to go towards the education, because you know, the kids, they walk up to you and they say, you know, that, like in my case, Madame Glenna, I want to have a bright future and I want to go to school, so what can you suggest? And they really, you know, quietly listen to you, unlike American teenagers.
What's the age range of these kids? Something I didn't
The youngest
ask.
is 6, and the oldest in the orphanage is 19. So the 19-year-old is kind of in charge of monitoring, the 19-year-old that I'm thinking of, the boys' dorm. Some of the older girls monitor the girls, but they have partners, so they're watching out for each other, because it'd be hard to monitor all of it.
These kids really listen.
They really listen, and they really do want to know.
Maybe some teenagers in America
yes,
that
exactly.
want you to listen.
So it was very fulfilling for me to have that kind of a. And at first I was kind of shocked, like, oh, what would I say to them?
What is education like for these kids? Are there classes at the orphanage, or they all go out to school? Is it involve an expenditure?
It does. It's you know, to sponsor a child at Mlasada is about $40 a month, because the American dollar goes a lot farther over there. But they all go to different schools. The public schools, you'll find 150 kids in a classroom, and the teacher just coming in and giving an assignment, and they're working
150
independently.
kids in one class.
Yes, exactly.
And we think our schools here are
overcrowded. I know. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I really enjoyed hearing about that experience, and I wish you the best in the future as you go back, who knows, for many return journeys.
Oh, let's say that. Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you for tuning in, and hope you'll tune in next time to Your World.
You are, we are one.